society, something still went horribly wrong. The architect of this mad utopian vision was this man, Dr. John Calhoun. Dr. Calhoun was an animal behavioral psychologist working for the National Institute of Mental Health, or NIM for short. And in 1916, Calhoun receives funding to construct a ginormous mouse enclosure. This place is huge. The base is 9 feet by 9 feet. The height is about 4.5 feet high, so kind of up to my chest. And the architecture is modeled to be a little modern, mousy high-rise, where spiraling mesh staircases connect hundreds of nesting boxes that Calhoun referred to as apartments. Apartments are meant to be safe spaces where the mice can breed and nurture and take care of their young. The enclosure would be provided with unlimited food, unlimited water. It would be cleaned every couple of weeks, and the temperature would be kept at a cool 68 degrees. Calhoun Christians his creation, Universe 25, June 1968. 4 pairs of mice. Four pairs of mice. 8 mice. I'm not much of a counter, more of a talker. 8 mice. 4 Adams and 4 Eves are granted admittance into paradise. These mice are free to do anything they want, and they proceed to do what mice do best, making lots of baby mice. Oh yeah, the population within the enclosure starts to grow exponentially, doubling every 55 days. 10 months into the experiment, over 600 mice reside within the enclosure. There are so many mice that to keep track of them all, Calhoun is forced to paint their fur in these adorably bright colors. Calhoun is going to use the color codes to track the behavior of individual mice and record the sorts of behavior that he observes. And there's plenty of behaviors to observe at this point, because at this point in the experiment, all is not well in mouse society. Social inequality has reared its ugly head, because you see, friends, the alpha males have swooped in and taken most of the females to the upper level apartments. Meanwhile, the downtrodden beta males are banished to the main floor of the enclosure, where conditions are crowded. It's sweaty, there's jostling, fights start to break out. Some of the mice start to act a little too violently. These mice Calhoun refers to as the delinquents. The delinquents, they start attacking other mice for no good reason. Some of the delinquents take shit too far, becoming what Calhoun refers to as the probers. Now, probers are sick little fucks, straight out of the purge. They begin to stage home invasions, breaking into the apartments, overwhelming the alpha males, and seriously harassing the females, forcing them to run away and abandon all their cute little baby mice, some of whom are eaten by the probers. Oh, look at the cute little babies. Most of them die a grisly death. A population inside the enclosure starts to stagnate in growth, and yet new mice are still being born. 1 year into the experiment, over 1,000 mice reside in the enclosure. The whole space is filled with like a stench of mouse sweat, tears, despair. The researchers themselves can barely breathe. And it is at this point in this dark experiment that some of the mice begin to exhibit a new type of behavior. Some of the boy mice start to get intimate with other boy mice. Pretty soon the enclosure collapses into full-on pansexual pandemonium, where you have all the mice are basically doing one big orgy. You got boy and boy, boy and girl, whatever your sexual preference, the mice have you covered. And at this point, most of the mice are fucking each other, but they're also fighting each other. They're fucking and fighting, and amidst the fucking and especially the fighting, mice get injured and some of the mice die. And at this point, despite there being unlimited food available, the surviving mice begin to eat the dead. Now, 550 days into the experiment, it is looking grim. A lot of the mice, well, they're scarred and bruised from the fucking and the fighting. They're covered with scabs and semen. They're pretty ugly looking. And it is at this point in the experiment that a new category of mice appears within the enclosure. Calhoun refers to these mice as the beautiful ones. The beautiful ones are interested in neither fucking nor fighting. They reside solely in the upper levels of the enclosure, and they spend their days eating, drinking, sleeping, and licking their fur compulsively until it's shiny, white, and clean. Like aloof aristocrats on the eve of revolution, the beautiful ones look down from their towers in disdain as the world around them burns. The population of the enclosure starts to drop in terms of volume. All the violent, horny mice are killing each other, and the beautiful ones refuse to reproduce. Their universe is too fucked up for them to want to generate new life. The population enters what Calhoun refers to as a behavioral sink, a slow spiral of a mouse population into extinction. 4 years after the start of the experiment, the mouse population in the enclosure drops to 0.
Whoa.
To Calhoun, this result was not at all surprising, because you see, friends, Calhoun had called Universe 25 Universe 25 for a reason. Calhoun had been the architect of multiple other rodent universes, each one inevitably leading to the complete collapse of rodent society. Calhoun goes on to publish these results in what is probably one of the most batshit insane papers in the history of science. Death Squared! The explosive growth and demise of a mouse population. The paper begins thusly. I shall largely speak of mice, but my thoughts are on man. That is Calhoun's way of telling you guys, you're all fucked. Calhoun goes on to quote directly from the Book of Revelation, I saw a pale horse, and its rider's name was Death, and Hades followed him. Calhoun then ends his science paper by working out the mathematics of death. Mortality, bodily death, equals the second death. Drastic reduction of mortality equals death of the second death equals death squared. And I'm gonna stop right here, because this is not good mathematics, nor is this good scientific reporting. Calhoun is essentially inventing clickbait before clickbait is a thing. And he knows exactly what the fuck he's doing, because at this point in the late 60s, early 70s, the United States has entered a major post-war baby boom, and all these boom babies are growing up and becoming hippies that go do all sorts of freaky sex stuff in big cities. And the God-fearing Nixon-voting Americans, they read Calhoun's research and go, ah, that explains it. Now, hippies in New York City get especially called out in this regard because A, they are dirty hippies, and B, New York is seen as this dirty city, as this overpopulated city filled with sexual degeneracy, what with all the porno theaters popping up in Times Square at the time. And this connection between New York City and the rodent behavior in Calhoun's experiments, it's made very explicit in the popular culture at the time. Like, for instance, in 1966, the documentary Multiply and Subdue the Earth is released. And we're now going to watch the opening scene of the documentary, where we're going to see footage of rats from one of Calhoun's earlier rat universes, and we're going to hear Calhoun's silky southern voice talk about rat behavior, how the females are being all unfeminine, and the males are being way too gay with each other. And this footage is going to be interspliced with footage of New Yorkers at the time. Let's take a gander.
As the population increased in size, as there were more interactions between individuals, the change that took place was not so much in the character of the deviance of behavior, but in the fact that a larger and larger percentage of the total population exhibited deviance in behavior that was not of survival value to the group. That is, they reached a time when most of the females never developed the ability to care for their young, to build nests, and so forth. And most of the males had extremely deviant sexual behavior, homosexual or pansexual, where the sex activity is directed towards any rat indiscriminately. One of the things which we might call deviance is merely a withdrawal. Now, on a theoretical basis, when the interacting group reaches the square of the optimum, every individual will be totally withdrawn, and no animal will be aware of the presence of any others, even though they're packed close together. And I think this is the general conclusion which may have application to the human scene.
25% of the residents of Midtown Manhattan are severely impaired or incapacitated by mental illness. 58% exhibit varying degrees of pathology.
That's right, friends. Half of you are pathological. Now, this connection between Calhoun's research and New Yorkers, it really starts to resonate through the culture of the time. For instance, take the work of this man, journalist and chronicler of counterculture Thomas Wolfe, who in 1968 publishes his impactful electric acid Kool-Aid test that talks about hippies dropping acid and all that. And the same day that this book comes out, Wolfe also publishes his influential essay, "Oh, Rotten Gotham! Sliding Down the Behavioral Sink," where he compares behavior of New Yorkers directly to Calhoun's rodents, writing, "It got easy to look at New Yorkers as animals, especially looking down at some place like a balcony at Grand Central at the rush hour Friday afternoon. The floor was filled with poor white humans," what the fuck, Wolf, "running around, dodging, blinking their eyes like a pen full of rats." And then it gets worse. Wolf goes on to describe these humans in terms that I feel, a bit offensive, and not uncomfortable with saying them. And I also want you guys to keep in mind that he's describing people and New Yorkers in that way, because that is how Calhoun is describing rat behavior is in his experiments, which by no means makes it okay, but provides some historical context. So this is what Wolf has to say. "Overcrowding gets the adrenaline going, and the adrenaline gets them hyped up. And there they are, hyped up, turning billows, nephritic, queer, autistic, sadistic, barren, batty, sloppy, hot in the pants, leering, pulling, numb, the usual New York, in other words. Overcrowding has thrown New York into a state of behavioral sink." Now here, I want to call out a few things about Wolf's terminology. He refers to some of the New Yorkers as autistic, and that is not a coincidence, because at this point, Calhoun is convinced that the beautiful ones exhibit signs of autism because he is convinced that autism is caused by overcrowding in cities, which is fucking stupid because we all now know that autism is caused by Tylenol. Second of all, I want to emphasize Wolf's use of the term behavioral sink in the title and essay. This is Calhoun's terminology for the slow spiral of society into extinction. And this is the first time that term appears in print in a popular culture magazine, and it spreads like wildfire, especially through the counterculture. For instance, countercultural icon, writer, and acid addict Hunter S. Thompson has this to say: "Behavioral sink is a word jewel, a flat-out winner, no question about it." And he uses the phrase in his Fear and Loathing series. The phrase itself also inspires an anthology of 1970 underground comics with the title Tales from the Behavioral Sink, with major contributors including underground comic legends Robert Crumb and Art Spiegelman. These underground comics depict decaying and rotting cities filled with alcohol and drug addicted hippies and also monstrous vermin that engage in all sorts of deviant sexual acts. So by the early 70s, Calhoun's research has really entered popular culture. And yet the impact of his work begins actually, like the cultural impact of his work actually begins a decade earlier than that, in 1962, when he publishes the results of one of his early rat universes, writing, "Among the males, the behavior disturbances ranged from sexual creation to cannibalism." So this paper comes out in 1962, and a copy of it falls on the desk of legendary British writer Anthony Burgess. And yeah, friends, you have to understand that around the time Burgess has been falsely diagnosed with a fatal brain tumor. Like, he's not actually dying, but he thinks that he is dying. So he decides to go full Breaking Bad, and he's gonna write as many novels as possible to leave behind some family before he croaks. And that's why in 1962, when the paper comes out, Burgess writes and publishes not one, but two different dystopian novels. The better known of which is, of course, A Clockwork Orange. And now the novel's imagery of young delinquents robbing and raping their way through a rotting London could have been inspired by the delinquents and probers of Calhoun's research, but I'm not here to talk about this novel. I'm here to talk about his lesser known work, The Wanting Scene. This novel, like, let's learn a little about it. We'll zoom in on the book cover and realize that this is the shocking, provocative vision of the future when homosexuality is encouraged and cannibalism is the ultimate solution for a desperately overcrowded world. This is not a book that has aged well, but it remains a fascinating cultural artifact. It depicts a not too distant future where the world in London is way too overcrowded. So the government is encouraging people to have less children by being way more gay with each other under the official government slogan of "It's Sapiens." Now, despite the brilliancy of this propaganda campaign, the slogan doesn't work because homosexuality is not a choice, and eventually the people, they rise up and they start eating each other while copulating wildly in the street. I'm now going to read a passage from later in the book when one of the characters is walking down the streets of London and all the cannibalistic sex is going on. He has jolly or somnolent dining clubs, it's very British. Corpses, bones, but was not himself molested. The endless city had a smell of roasting flesh and stopped up drains. Once or twice, to his embarrassment, he saw opened and unashamed copulation. He saw no police. They all seemed absorbed or digested into the generality. It was a fine spring day. This science fiction work goes on to directly inspire additional science fiction, such as the 1966 Harry Harrison novel, Make Room! Make Room! Which in 1972 is turned into the cult sci-fi film, Soylent Green. So in the opening credits of Soylent Green, we learn the set and setting of this not too distant future. The year 2022. The place, New York City. The population, 40 million. This imagines a nightmarish future of New York where every single part of New York City is as crowded as Times Square on a Friday. It's really terrible, and there's nothing really to eat except for a mysterious substance called Soylent Green. Let's watch a clip from the film where the people riot in New York when the supply of Soylent Green runs out.
This is the police. This is the police. This is the police. I'm asking you to disperse. The supply of Soylent Green has been exhausted. You must evacuate the area. The scoops are on their way. The scoops are on their way. I repeat, the scoops are on their way.
some of them are wearing COVID masks. This movie's pretty dead on in its depiction of the future. At the end of the film, in a shocking finale, we learn the shocking secret of Soylent Green. And that scene goes approximately thus.
Soylent Green is made out of people!
Yes, it was people all along. So this influential film was indirectly influenced by Burgess's work, and thus it was indirectly influenced by Calhoun's research, but it doesn't directly reflect Calhoun's economic thesis about the dark future of humanity. Instead, it takes a much older Malthusian view of human nature and human economics based on the work of 18th century scholar Thomas Malthus, who one day takes a look around and goes, boy, sure are a lot of poor people around. And those poor people, they like to breed and eat. And oh no, if the poor people keep breeding, there won't be anything to eat. So Malthus goes on to type up this theories in his essay on the principle of population, which essentially compares poor people to pigeons. In that if you feed poor people now, so they don't starve, there'll just be more poor people who will starve later. So it's just much more merciful to let them starve now. It's just common sense. Fuck you, Malthus. Fortunately, this Malthusian future never comes to pass, partially through the work and research of this man, German chemist Fritz Haber, who in the first decade of the 20th century develops a process to very cheaply catch nitrogen from air and turn it into fertilizer, allowing countless new fields to be fertilized, feeding billions of people. This is equivalent to being able to snatch hot dogs from thin air. Like, it's practically magic. Billions of more people can be born. But in case you think Haber is such a great hero, also please keep in mind that he was the first to invent the use of chemical warfare in World War I on the German side, leading to countless Allied deaths. So it's like, is he in heaven, hell, purgatory? I don't fucking know. But all I know is it's provable that humanity starts to grow exponentially directly due to his discovery. Like, the dashed line is all the people that were born because of Haber's discovery. He ushers in, like science ushers in this new future. And like the closest science fiction work, in my opinion, to capture the essence of the future that Haber has ushered in is, of course, one of my favorites, the classic Star Trek series, which depicts a so-called post-scarcity society where they have this device called the replicator that essentially can reassemble air molecules and print food and pizzas and clothes and iPhones. Like, the economy's fucking solved. That's it. But there's something about the Star Trek mythology that has always troubled me. And that troubling aspect, like from my perspective, is especially noticeable in the scene from one of the Star Trek films where a space admiral is visited in his apartment on his birthday. And I'm just gonna show you guys the clip, and then we'll discuss if there's anything wonky or troubling about it. Let's take a look.
Other people have birthdays. Why are we treating yours like a funeral? How's that on your lecture? What the hell do you want? This is not about age. And you know it. It's about you flying a goddamn computer console when you want to be out there hopping galaxies. Building your notions of poetry because we all have our assigned duties. Paul, you're hiding. Hiding behind rules and regulations. Who am I hiding from? From yourself, Admiral.
Anything weird about the Space Admiral's apartment? It's fucking huge, and it's in San Francisco, practically overlooking the Golden Gate Bridge. Now, I spent a decade living in San Francisco, and I know you don't get to live in an apartment like this unless you're Mark fucking Zuckerberg. And that's where the Space Admiral lives. But where does the Space Janitor reside? Like, we don't really see that on the show, but it's probably not nearly as a place that says nice, especially given the fact that food is unlimited and people are breeding. And I'm pretty sure that San Francisco and New York rent prices have not gone down over like those 200 years. Maybe that's why the space janitors of the world are forced to board spaceships and take off into space and colonize planets for the glory of the Federation. They have the option of doing that, but here on Earth, we do not. We are stuck with our high rent prices. And that's the notion that Calhoun is exploring in his research. What happens when resources are unlimited, but housing isn't? And the first writer to really grasp the implications of Calhoun's research is the absolutely brilliant writer J.G. Ballard, who he knows a thing or two about luxury living because he was born into a very wealthy family in colonial Singapore, but he also knows a thing or two about living in tight, crowded conditions because he spends his teenage years in a Japanese concentration camp. He also knows a thing or two about Calhoun's work and mouse behavior because one day he makes the misfortune of buying a bunch of pet mice for his family, and as his daughter, Faye Ballard, later tells it, the mice multiplied quickly and started to eat each other. I can still see the bitten headless torsos and separated heads lying in the sawdust. Don't get your children mice, it'll scar them for life and you'll pay the therapy bills. Ballard channels this trauma into his absolutely brilliant 1975 book, High Rise, which shows how urban overpopulation can lead to violence and sexual degradation. It's an absolutely brilliant book. Please read it. If you don't have time, watch the movie. It's kind of okay. It stars Loki from the Avengers. It depicts life in this absolutely amazing high rise that has everything. There's a pool, there's a swimming pool, supermarket, tennis courts. The rich live on top and they're really rich. The rich live on the lower floors, and the really rich live on the upper floors. And I'm gonna show you a quick scene from like the trailer, just so you guys know how nice this place actually is.
For all its inconveniences, Lang was satisfied with life in the high-rise, ready to move forward and explore life. How exactly? He had not yet decided.
I'm so sorry.
I'll survive.
I thought you were empty.
I just moved in.
You're an excellent specimen. Why don't you come up later and have a drink?
You don't know how things work around here, do you?
I'm a fast learner.
Okay, so the characters spend the opening of the book just like drinking a lot and fucking each other, and life is really great. But there are certain tensions. The really wealthy residents on the upper floors, their apartments are spacious enough to afford big dogs, but they have to take those dogs all the way down to the ground level so the dogs can piss, and they're too lazy to do that, so instead they let their dogs piss in the elevator. And over time, the tensions between floors builds and builds until it explodes into like a violent orgy where everybody kills each other. I'm not gonna show a scene from later in the book where everybody has descended into their animal cells and a riot breaks out in the remnants of the supermarket.
Well, let me go to I wouldn't do that. Let me through, it's my cake. Get off, that's mine. It's mine. Come on.
That woman yells, "Misogynist!" and she breaks the bottle over his head and does a little spin. Oh! It's really awesome. But this is like a really dark thesis of humanity that Ballard presents, in which no matter how great life is, no matter how much the material abundance, something about being presently close to other human beings eventually gets to us, and we eventually revert to our most primal animal selves, where we all want to just fuck or kill each other. And living in New York for about 4 years, maybe Ballard's not exactly wrong, but like, what do we do about this? How do we maintain social order? Well, maybe we can look to Calhoun, who, remember, is finding equivalence between rodents and humans. And so his ideas on how to maintain rodent society, he's trying to apply to maintain human society, to maintain a balance. So what does Calhoun have to say about this? Well, he says, in terms of his equivalent rodents, a stable rodent group is one where there's a well-developed dominance hierarchy. Maybe what we need is a well-developed dominance hierarchy to maintain society. Maybe what we need is fascism? Give your hearts, people! Okay, so I'm not going to talk about actual political figures that worked Calhoun's research into this philosophy, because that's a little too real right now. Instead, I want to talk about how this linkage between Calhoun's ideas and fascism has been explored through fiction, particularly through the works of comic book writers Alan Grant and John Wagner, who are intimately familiar with Calhoun's research, because at one point they developed a lesser-known Batman villain, the Ratcatcher, who commands an army of rats that terrorize the Cape Crusader. And in one of the comics, the Ratcatcher gives a motivational speech to his ratties where he quotes directly from Calhoun's work, stating, "Gather round, my ratties, and I'll tell you a tale to make your blood run cold. Some behaviorists made a nice big cage with everything a happy rat could want. Food was unlimited, but living space wasn't. Numbers grew, but there was nowhere to go. Discipline broke down. Gangs of adolescent males roamed the universe, bullying and killing. Rat turned against rat in an orgy of violence. Cannibalism was rife. I look at Gotham, my friends, and what do I see? Gangs roam the street, attacking at will. Crime, murder, their society is collapsing all around them. We will hasten their demise. How amazing would it be if DC did a Ratcatcher movie, make it a musical, little singing Muppet rats. Anyway, I don't want to talk about the Ratcatcher. I want to talk about Alan and John's best known work, the 1977 comic series 2000 AD, which is really good. It depicts a future where most of humanity is confined to megacities, the largest of which, Megacity 1, is an unbroken stretch of concrete going from Boston to Washington, D.C. There's plenty of food, but AI and robots have took 90% of the jobs. Everyone's unemployed, they're getting ready to kill each other, they're at each other's throats, and the only thing maintaining order is the fascist Department of Justice that sends fascist foot soldiers to patrol the streets acting as judges, juries, and executioners. The best known of which is the hero of the comics, Judge Dredd, who spends the comics beating on gangs of teenage delinquents and also beating on pro-democracy protesters. Oh, what's that, friend? Oh, you want democracy now? Well then, build yourself a time machine and go back to 2015, because it ain't happening. The brilliancy of this dark comic series is that Dredd is the hero. We see the world through a fascist point of view. Now, I frequently ask myself, how do fascists sleep at night with all the horrible shit that they do? And the answer is they sleep pretty damn well. Because from their point of view, they're the only thing standing between society and gay cannibalism. Now, I'm not going to show the opening scene of the Judge Dredd film narrated by Dredd, and I want you to think about how, awesome it must feel to be a fucking evil fascist. And then we'll discuss. Again, he's narrating the film. You see the world through his eyes.
Inside the walls, a cursed city, stretching from Boston to Washington, D.C. An unbroken concrete landscape. 800 million people living in the ruin of the old world and the megastructures of the new one. Mega blocks, mega highways, Mega City 1. Convulsing, choking, breaking under its own weight. Citizens in fear of the street, the gun, the gang. Only one thing fighting for order in the chaos. The men and women of the Hall of Justice. executioners, judges.
Boom, boom. Fucking awesome. Oh man, so empowering. Okay, so from a fascist perspective, they see humanity as, like city dwellers in particular, as this convulsing sea of vermin that they must stomp on to protect the so-called real citizens. Paradoxically, to satisfy this narcissistic desire to be seen as the peacekeepers. They want a peace prize of some sort. Now, but like, will this maintain a stable social order? Well, no, because as we all know, corrupt fascist regimes collapse sooner or later. This is actually a plot point in Burgess's The Wanting Seed. At one point, the fascist regime is put into place to force people to be just gayer with each other, but then the people rise up and they eat the fascists. Yeah, which is nice, but their overpopulation problem like remains. It's not a solution ultimately. So how do we avoid Calhoun's like dystopia coming to pass? Like, what should we do? Maybe to solve the overpopulation problem, maybe a liberal solution would be more appropriate. Maybe there's a liberal that has some good ideas. Well, let's see. Let's look at the works of this real-world liberal figure, Stanford professor of ecology, Dr. Paul Ehrlich, who is concerned about the environment, and he thinks, he has shown that there's a direct link between global warming and human population. So let's, hear his thoughts on that. Too many cars, too many factories, too little water, too much carbon dioxide. All can be traced easily to too many people. Like, too much carbon dioxide, I hate that. What are we gonna do about this, Ehrlich? You have any ideas? To which Ehrlich responds, one plan involves the addition of temporary sterilants into water supplies. Doses of the antidote would be carefully rationed by the government to produce the desired population size. What the fuck, Ehrlich? It's not cool. Ehrlich goes on to publish these ideas in his 1968 book, The Population Bomb, and where he quotes directly from Calhoun's research, and this book becomes an immediate New York Times bestseller. Millions of copies are sold, which is hugely problematic for many reasons, but one of which is the opening chapter of the book, where he describes India and New Delhi in just the nastiest terms that I'm not gonna use because it's so dirty and overpopulated, even though the population of New Delhi at the time is smaller than that of Paris proper. But Paris is the center of world culture, and to him, New Delhi is, so he's gonna write it anyway. And these ideas are gonna spread through the political culture of the time, and it's gonna lead to really bad things happening, because in 1974, India starts a massive population control campaign with propaganda slogans like this one: men, the power to prevent birth is in your hands. Sounds like a cute propaganda campaign to get guys to jack off instead of having children, but it's not. It's actually a sign of something much darker. So in 1974, 8 million people in India are sterilized, some through coercion, some by force. Entire villages of men are rounded up for snip, snip. And here, I need to say that even the most well-meaning liberal technocrat, if they see human beings not as human beings, but as numbers to be optimized for the greater cause, well, that is going to lead to atrocity. So, we have to remember that people are people. Now, Calhoun, to his credit, he thinks Ehrlich is a little too extremist in his ideas. He's like, they don't need to sterilize everybody. That's like cheating. That's not, that's using a cheat code in a video game. We can be smarter about what we do. So Calhoun is convinced that if he can make people smarter, then people will deal with overpopulation, and to him, because people are equivalent to rodents, he wants to make his rodents smarter. In one of his rat experiments, he observes a gay rat being extra smart, and he refers to it as a creative deviant. And so he has this theory that like the gay rats are just smarter than the straight rats, but if you can only get the gay rats to breed with the straight females, then like he'll just be able to optimize the whole population for smartness. And he's really gung-ho about this, declaring, "We expect to make as big a change in our rats in 6 years as nature and natural selection did in 50 million. Very ambitious. Around this time, Calhoun's lab is visited by journalist Robert O'Brien, and O'Brien is horrified by what he sees, so much so that he decides to write a children's book. The Rats of Nim. It's about a bunch of genetically engineered smart rats at the National Institute of Mental Health. And by the early 80s, a copy of this book falls in the lap of this man, Don Bluth. Now, for those of you who don't know Don Bluth, he was a Disney animator who quits Disney because he thinks Disney films aren't extreme enough, and he goes on to create a whole series of absolutely beautifully animated movies that traumatize an entire generation of millennials. We got classics like The Land Before Time, with this adorable brontosaurus watches his mother slowly die in horrible agony. It says, "Everything hurts." Then you got the classic All Dogs Go to Heaven, in which we learn that all dogs do not indeed go to heaven. Some burn forever in the fiery pits of hell. Yeah. And then we come to the film influenced by O'Brien's book, The Secret of Nim. I mean, look at this cute little mousie on this poster. It's so adorable. How bad could this movie possibly be? Let's watch a clip.
In the beginning, we were ordinary street rats, stealing our daily bread and living off the efforts of man's work. We were captured, put in cages, and sent to a place called Rouge. There were many animals there, in cages. They were put through the most unspeakable tortures.
Not the monkey.
Satisfies scientific curiosity. Often at night, I would hear them crying out in anguish. 20 rats and 11 mice were given injections. Our world began changing. One night, I looked upon the words under the cage door and understood them. We had become intelligent. We could read. The miracle was kept secret from the scientists. And in the quiet of the night, we escaped through the ventilation system.
The mice were blown away. Sucked down dark air shards to their depths.
Like 5-year-olds watch this, and their parents, so it made for some awkward conversations. But this is the first time, like in like the early 80s, that in America culture in particular, children and their parents who are forced to watch this shit, they begin to empathize with the rodent victims of Calhoun's experiments. And then that empathy, culturally, it starts to spread out to the human beings that are falsely made equivalent to rodents in Calhoun's theoretical implications like 20 years earlier. There's a real empathy for the city dwellers and the slum dwellers who are then reduced to rats to be tortured like the poor rats in the film. And this leads to an antipathy to systems, to merciless systems that dehumanize us and that would reduce us to mice, rats, rodents, vermin, for the purposes of then disposing of us for the greater good. This is a cultural shift that we see in the 80s. Like, for instance, remember Art Spiegelman, the underground comic book writer who contributed to Tales from the Behavioral Sick? Well, Spiegelman is the son of 2 Holocaust survivors. And in the 1980s, he publishes his groundbreaking graphic novel, Mouse, in which his parents and other Jewish concentration camp victims are falsely depicted as mice through the eyes of their murderers, tearing down this false equivalence. And at this point, the false equivalence proposed by Calhoun between mouse and man, it begins to break down by the 80s. And also by the 80s, a failed B-movie actor is elected as the Republican president, and scientific funding is cut across the board. Calhoun, he's out of a job now. But he does okay for himself. He gets to pal around with the Pope, preaching the apocalypse, and yet the apocalypse that he promises us, it never comes to pass. His ideas fall into irrelevance. Why did his apocalypse never come to pass? Well, for one thing, and I want to emphasize this, human beings are not mice. We have ideas, like passions, thoughts. We write poetry, music. We go to movies. We have ambitions. We can create. We can keep it in our pants because we've invented pants. My friends, I think ultimately that we as a society are gonna be okay. Despite all the shit going on in the world right now, we are gonna be okay. Wait, what's this? Take a look at this! World population growth isn't rising, it's drastically falling. Look! We are in the midst of Calhoun's behavioral sink. It seems we skipped over all the good stuff like the gay sex and the cannibalism and went straight to not reproducing. Right now, there's a whole generation of young people who refuse to get a job, integrate into society, start a family, and instead they spend their whole days grooming their facial hair. This is how the world ends. Not with a gangbang, but with an impotent whimper. Still, despite the fact that the odds are stacked against us, I retain hope. So when I quickly raise my glass and offer a toast to continued social procreation, humanity's best hope for survival. Cheers.
Cheers.
Friends, I want to thank you so much for coming out in our Rouge Salon experiment. So Rouge Salon ultimately is intended to be a project not just like for us, but like for you folks. And if you have, your own tales of like history and science gone right or more likely gone wrong, please join us in discussion. Some of us will head out afterwards to a local bar to just brainstorm and brewstorm about ways how we can keep the project going. So feel free to join us. Thank you so much for coming.